Okay, my name is Joaquin Robles. I am from Puerto Rico. I got here in 1969, and I've been in the city of South Bend for the last 40 years.
40 years in South Bend. That's an incredible life and a legacy here. And in those 40 years, Joaquin Robles has witnessed firsthand the huge changes in South Bend's Latinx community and culture. I'm George Garner from the Indiana University South Bend Civil Rights Heritage Center, and we're telling local history in South Bend's own words.
So, how much schooling did you receive back in Puerto Rico as compared to in the United States?
That's Christopher Valentine. He interviewed Joaquin for a class project at IU South Bend back in 2009.
I finished my high school over there. Coming here back in the 70s, and thanks to Mrs. Nino, Mr. Nino, which started bilingual program here in South Bend.
He's talking about Concepcion Nino and her husband Ignacio.
They opened a big avenue for all the Hispanics. Mrs. Nino made a program for the Hispanic speaking, and her and other teachers helped us how to speak English a little bit, and we can go forward. Probably, if it's not for them, probably won't be talking to you right now, because who knows where I would have been at this moment. But yes, thank you to them.
They also started a child care center.
They call it El Campito.
Mm-hmm. The farm worker's child.
Yes. And they start from there, and today El Campito continue helping the little kids to learn English and they have education.
El Campito is still here, 15 years after this interview. In fact, I can look out the window of the Civil Rights Heritage Center and see them. They're just 2 blocks south of us. Mrs. Nino's daycare center and the English classes were all a function of Centro Cristiano de la Comunidad, known by many as El Centro. They provided direct support for the growing number of migrant workers harvesting crops on farms around the far southwest side of the city. Joaquin didn't work on the farms, but he was a beneficiary of El Centro. And with his dual language skills, Joaquin got a job at a meatpacking plant.
That was pretty good. We made a good money, but around 1980, most of the country started turning around and going different way.
The plant shut down, and Joaquin was out of a job, but not for too long.
1983, I started in the kitchen in Senor Mac Center. From there, I went to the pharmacy as a transporter for 18 years.
I had to look up what a transporter was, and it sounds really rewarding. He literally transported people or things inside St. Joseph's Medical Center.
And the rest of it, I've been as a transporter for the X-ray department.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been pretty good.
And he apparently had fun with it. I found a newspaper article about Joaquin from 2003, and it turns out that he loved to dress up in costumes. Once he came dressed as Father Time, another he was Santa Claus. One time he tried an Abraham Lincoln costume. People commented that they didn't think Lincoln was as short as Joaquin was, but he just shrugged it off. He told them he was Abraham Lincoln's cousin. Joaquin worked for St. Joe Med Center for decades, all the while embedding himself in the local Latinx community.
But I read his Spanish paper, Puente, and follow what's going around the area. It's totally free.
El Puente is still publishing today.
Anybody who is Spanish and like to read that paper, it's a good newspaper for the Hispanic.
Speaking of the paper, do you believe that it is an accurate representation of Latino culture?
You talk about like South Bend Tribune?
Well, yeah.
Well, I would say up to last 5 years, you hardly don't see any Hispanic on a newspaper as a reporter, as a writer. Now I notice that there is probably maybe 4, 5 on the South Bend Tribune. They got different columns, you know. Of course, they write in English and on TV. Up to 15 years ago, you don't see no Hispanic as a reporter.
And there's a lot fewer now since the Tribune was sold from a private, local, family-owned company to a national corporation.
What about in other terms of local culture? Do you see any artworks or, I don't know, like murals, buildings, things like that
yes,
sort?
there's one on Western Avenue.
He's talking about the mural on the side of Chico's restaurant on the corner of Western and Olive.
That was put up by Hispanic. Used to be one by on Western Avenue and let me see, by the park, baseball park.
He's talking about what's now Four Winds Field.
But they tore down the building.
Yeah, that's still a real sore spot for many in the community. This mural was removed from a building at Western and Taylor. The Granger Community Church bought it and painted over it. That was a huge loss, for sure. But over Joaquin's decades in South Bend, he's seen so many other markers of Latinx culture grow. And not just in South Bend, in the whole region.
If you go most of Western Avenue, Plymouth, you go on Goshen, Elkhart, all a lot of it been controlled now for the Hispanic, which is many years ago, you only find one store. And from there, we got lots of Hispanic business in here, so a lot of people don't have to go to Chicago for any thing that they need, grocery or clothing or even paper. So it's a lot of progress for the Hispanic. Of course, a lot of people want more, but we have to go one step at a time, I guess.
Backing up just a little bit onto politics, how do you feel about the nomination and further passing of Judge Sotomayor? And in contrast, how did you feel about Roberto Gonzalez as part of the Bush administration?
Yeah, I'm gonna skip this part of the interview. Joaquin had some feelings about politics. He's clearly read his El Puente, South Bend Tribune, and no doubt other papers too. But there was something else interesting in this interview. Several times, Christopher, the interviewer, asked Joaquin if he ever felt discriminated against because of his Puerto Rican heritage.
Do you feel that you were limited at all in your when you first arrived in South Bend, being from Puerto Rico?
No, at that moment.
Christopher asked more times and in different ways, but Joaquin gave basically the same answer.
And you yourself feel that you've never been discriminated against in any way or form?
Not that I know.
What about any of your close friends? Do you have any recollection of your friends being discriminated against openly, or?
No, and nobody come across they say been discriminated.
And you don't believe that there's been any kind of disagreement or overt kind of intolerance towards these business owners and their areas, considering the fact that there are large amounts of the African American community and white community who might still hold some prejudice? Or
No, that I know. They doing pretty good.
This is a really interesting statement, especially considering Joaquin came to the U.S. just a few years after the uprisings in the late 1960s. He even acknowledges them in the interview.
Of course, it was maybe 5, 10 years ago, before I got here. It was a problem, the minority, like a black can march, but they had a march in Washington, and it was a lot of problem in Chicago.
For whatever reason, Joaquin either didn't experience discrimination or didn't allow himself to acknowledge it.
But since I've been here, I've been okay, the far I know it. Of course, there have been some problem areas that maybe some people feel like they've been discriminated.
I struggled while listening to this part. I found myself torn between the many, many incidents I see and read and hear about all the time. But also, I wanted to acknowledge Joaquin's truth as he's telling it. Maybe he didn't see any discrimination. Maybe he just didn't face it.
What about your children? Because you are a father, right?
Yep.
Are you a grandfather as well?
Uh-huh.
What do you feel that are the differences between living in this country for you, coming from Puerto Rico, and your children and your grandchildren who are born and predominantly raised here and kind of adopted to the culture almost right away?
Well, they I don't think they got any problem because they born here and grew up in here and speak the language.
He doesn't think they had any problems. That does feel like a bold statement to make. But listening to other parts of the interview, I don't think Joaquin was just ignoring reality. Christopher asked him about the United States' immigration policy, like whether undocumented immigrants should be entitled to health care. I would say yes, absolutely, for the record. Joaquin criticized U.S. lawmakers on their lack of progress towards meaningful reform.
They go week by week and nothing get done. And the one who suffer is the people who come into this country, try to find some better way to live, but a lot of whatever they're looking for is denied by the government or the city or wherever they live, wherever they go. It's persecution a lot of time.
It's persecution, he said. And I think he's right. But maybe, despite all Joaquin has seen and lived through, maybe he just had a hopelessly optimistic outlook on life.
Maybe no, who knows? Maybe in the future we have a Hispanic president. That's pretty good.
That could indeed be pretty good. And as Christopher started wrapping up the interview, Joaquin had even more optimism to share.
The Hispanics were called Latinos. Don't matter where we come from. Try to do the best we can and see how far we can go, how far and what we can do for this country. There's a lot of Hispanic, they go high school, college, that they want to do something with their life. And you're one of them. And that is fantastic.
Christopher gave Joaquin one last shot at archival immortality.
All right, well, unless you have anything, maybe a shout out to your own family, let it live in the annals of history.
Well, I say thank you to my parents for bringing me this world, and thank you for the community with the co-worker, St. John McCenter. They've been real nice, and it's been terrific. It's been pretty good. And thank you for you to allow me to talk to you in this interview.
South Bend's Own Words is a production of the Indiana University South Bend Civil Rights Heritage Center. It was written and hosted by me, George Garner. This episode was produced by Jon Watson from the Ernestine M. Raclin School of the Arts at IU South Bend. Kevin Tinmarsh was the co-creator, and its theme music was by Josh Woodward. Are you looking for more honest conversations about the history of South Bend? Visit us and learn how IU South Bend students inspired the transformation of a once segregated city-owned swimming pool. We offer guided tours and put on numerous public events that show how the history of oppression echoes through this city today. See and hear more history, or plan your visit, all at crhc.iusb.edu.